concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, you guys? What's up, you guys? Welcome to Livestream. I'm very happy that you're here, and I'm very happy to be here with you. I'm just doing some. I learned that if you spend a lot of time like at your computer or looking at your phone, you can get really bad posture. It can compress some nerves in your neck, and so I learned to you put your head like this up against. Well, you're supposed to do it against the wall. It's just, and then you take your arms at 45, and you go up and down, and then anyway. Make sure my nerves are sufficiently loose for the live stream. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. Oh, there we go. Can you guys hear the fans from those chargers? I don't know. Whatever makes the most chins. That's why you grow the beard. It's to hide the chins. I don't think that's good for my nerves. I'm trying really hard to. There we go. Oh yeah, that improved it a lot. The chest hair really improves the. What's up, you guys? Welcome to the live stream. What if I hunch my shoulders? No, I feel like it makes my. Oh, it hurts. That hurts a little bit. I'll be expecting GIFs of that on Facebook and Instagram and all that. I would be expecting the GIFs and the memes to get on it, you guys. Oh, we are going to answer some questions today. Here's the deal. You're right here. You're right here. And I'm going to answer your questions. And these beautiful people are over here. These are my patrons, and I'm going to answer their questions because, I mean, they pay the bills, guys. You guys over here, I'm glad, you know, there's how many, let's ask this question. How many non-patron viewers does it take to equal one patron paying $2 a month? I'm not saying everything boils down to a monetary analysis. What is one human being worth? All human beings have inherent worth that is not encapsulated by money. Ugh. But if they were, how many? I've got 200 viewers over here. I've got like, you know what? I don't know, 5 or 6 people, maybe 10 in it. But they actually pay. What's it worth? I don't know. That's just something to think about. Where's the memes, you guys? I put you on screen and you're not posting memes. What's up, Phantom? Good to see you, man. There we go. Now here they come, the memes. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to answer your questions. I'm going to answer their questions. If you want to make sure that I answer your question, hit the $ right down here and leave a super chat. No super chats yet, so you have the chance to leave a super chat now that I will ignore for like 20 minutes while I get the stream going. But eventually I will read them. Justin Rice says, I'm a patron. It's just easier to watch YouTube on my phone. Yeah. There's the memes. Yeah. Is that Jason Momoa? Jason Momoa can wear whatever the hell he wants. And, Jason, call me. I mean, I feel like whatever... here's what I feel like. Hang on a second. I feel like whatever... First of all, that is Jason Momoa, right? I'm not crazy here. That's him. Oh, wrong window. That is Jason Momoa, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it is. I feel like whatever your... let's just say preferences. Whatever your preference is. And I'm not trying to get into politics and all these uncomfortable topics that we don't want to have with our parents or our kids. But I'm just saying, whichever way you lean, I feel like this is just a beautiful, beautiful human being. I mean, come on. Shut up. Jason. Okay, anyway. Maybe just me? Just me? Just me? Okay. All right, maybe just me. Maybe I'm the only one. Okay. All right, I'm sorry. Never mind. Making it weird. Welcome to the live stream. Believe it or not, we will be talking about his hair is clean. Scott Abramachik, don't you dare suggest that Jason Momoa does not have clean, beautiful smelling floral hair. Do not. Maybe sandalwood. Do not suggest. His hair, it looks like that for the character. It is, you know it's clean and smells good. What does Jason Momoa's hair smell like? All right, anyway. We're here to talk about FPV. I got to get my mind back on track. Still no super chats. I'm going to take your question. Let's take a question. Oh, I'm looking for a question. Luisme FPV has a question. Luisme FPV says, I have a question. I got the TBS Fusion VRX. I'd like to know if I need to do any update or configuration to have it ready to use with 100% performance. Luisme, I would always update it to the latest firmware just on principle. Just get used to it. So I don't know, like, if there's any big, like, performance-breaking bugs in the current firmware that they're shipping with, but it's just a good idea to update to the latest firmware anyway, so I would do it. It has pretty good performance, though. Regardless. Sure, okay, let's talk about the big news. Orca acquired Immersion RC. Is it true? Yes, it's true. They made an announcement. Why? I mean, they announced it. So yes, it's true. What are your thoughts? I mean, they have been partnered together for a long time. Orca has been doing primary fulfillment for Immersion RC products in Europe. So basically, Immersion RC has been run out of the Orca warehouse. They've been like the premier distributor. So, I mean, I could kind of see this coming. They've been sort of buddies for a while. Ghost, Rapid Fire went in the Orca goggles. That's sort of like the default module to come with the Orca goggles. So they've been sort of flirting with each other for a while, kind of like how I'm flirting with Jason Momoa earlier. So they've been flirting with each other for a little while, and now they've finally consummated the relationship. They're married. You know, so yeah. What are your thoughts? I mean, Immersion RC was. It feels like Immersion RC, or like originally they were heavily partnered with Fat Shark. In fact, when I went to Shenzhen it was probably around 2018, I think. I'd have to go back and look. When I went to Shenzhen and visited the Fat Shark facility, they invited me out there to do a little travel vlog and help tell the story of why their goggles didn't have a power button yet. I went out there and they graciously showed me all around their factory and their, manufacturing and so forth. Immersion RC was in the same building. Like Tony Cake was out there. He happens to be in China at the time for whatever reason. And literally on one side of the room was a Fat Shark engineer, and on the other side of the room, Tony Cake had a desk and a station. So they were. I've always said they were sister companies. I don't think they were officially in any way the same company, but if you work out of the same building, you certainly are working closely together. And for example, Immersion RC did the work on the Fat Shark DVR, I believe is true. So it's nothing new that Immersion RC is working closely with a goggle manufacturer. There are some ways, I think, in which this partnership is a little different. I think that Orca has broader capability to help with design and manufacturing than Fat Shark did. I think that Orca has a much deeper bench of engineering resources. Not that necessarily Tony Cake Tony Cake is himself an exemplary engineer. I say that because I've had phone calls with Tony, and he's just sitting there in his lab with his oscilloscope and his soldering iron, and just you talk to him about the technology. You ever had the situation where somebody comes to show you their new product and it's pretty clear that who you're talking to is like a project manager, and you ask them an engineering question and they kind of don't know the answer, or maybe they mealy mouth it a little bit, or maybe they say, hold on, I've got the engineer here, you can talk to them. Tony Cake, not like any of that. Tony Cake, the owner of Immersion RC, in case you don't know him by name, he is an engineer at heart. So I say that because when I say that Orca has a deeper engineering bench than Fat Shark, at the end of the day, Fat Shark feels to me like they design a product and they know their market, but ultimately they don't have massive engineering resources. They assemble products from existing stuff. And that's not to say that that's trivial. Lots of companies do that badly, and Fat Shark does it really well. They design, like, what did Fat Shark design about their goggles? What did they invent? The shell. Somebody designed the shell for them. They buy the optic modules and they put the optic modules in there. So there was some design that went into the power board, for example, the DVR board. And I'm going to guess that Tony Cake did that design, for the record. I don't know that for a fact. So I think that Immersion RC has a bright future with Orca. I think that the things that Tony Cake is capable of doing, he needs a platform to do them, because a rapid fire module is no good without goggles to put it in. And a ghost module, a ghost receiver is no good without a quad to put it in, or something else. And I think it's going to be really good. So, very exciting. We shall see. We shall see is the bottom line. Okay, great question. Great question. Here's the flip side of that, though. Okay, now I've sort of said nice things about everybody. Here's the flip side of that, though. What am I looking for? Here we go. Here we go. Got it. Why does this controller have ghosted? Hey! Why does this controller have Ghost in it and not Express LRS? Some people have asked. And the answer is, obviously, that Immersion RC and Orca are partners or sister companies or whatever you want to call it. And so from a business standpoint, it makes sense to promote each other's products. So if there is a weakness in the partnership, it will be that when you combine your assets, you also combine your liabilities. And there may be opportunities that Immersion RC could take advantage of if they were not partnered, that they will not be able to take advantage of because it doesn't make sense for Orca, where it might make sense for Immersion RC. Now, I obviously, they feel that the positives are offset by the potential negatives, or they wouldn't have done it. That doesn't necessarily mean that what they're going to come up with is what's best for you or me, the actual customer. I mean, theoretically, what's best for the customer is also what's good for the company. But then sometimes what's best for the company, the customer looks at and goes, really? Interesting choice. There you go. Okay, now I've jibber-jabbered for like 10 minutes. Let's check back. Let's check back with the chat. Let's see what we got here. Gilles Capitaine wants to know if I'm ready for Rampage. I am going to Rotor Riot Rampage. I will be there. Hope you guys are going to hope to see you there. It's getting pretty close. We're like less than 3 weeks away, so it's going to be pretty freaking epic. We'll see who gets there. I'm looking forward to it. Always happy to go back to Rampage. There's a question here from Orangugelius. Anyone know how to adjust the throttle curve in Betaflight? Just built a GEP-RC Synalog, and I put Zing 2 2205s to have more power, but the throttle's too touchy at the bottom end, and I'd just like to smooth it out at the bottom end. Appreciate the help. If that's what you want to do, I'm going to show you how. I have to say, I fly with linear throttle, so if I struggle with this just a tiny bit or look unfamiliar, that's why. But what you want to do is this. Let's see. The first thing you want to do is go to Rate Profile. And you want to lower your throttle mid. I think what you do is you lower your throttle mid all the way down. And then, can I zoom in on this a little? You lower your throttle mid all the way down to 0. And then you raise your throttle expo, and what we're going to see is that is, I think, what people are asking for. Is that what they're asking for? I think it is. And then you raise your throttle expo anywhere, any value between, with 0 and 1. The more expo, the more it will smooth it out. And I think if we, let's just set this as 0.5. If we raise throttle mid, it pushes that up. Yeah. So what you want to do is you want to raise the expo and then push the soft part of the expo curve all the way down, lower. So maybe you don't want throttle mid all the way at 0, right? Maybe you want throttle mid a little higher, like at 20%. But that's what you're going to do. You probably don't want throttle mid any lower than like 10%. Because, I don't know, you'd have to play with it. Bib FPV, I know what you're saying. You know, canonically, you set throttle mid to the quad's hover point. That's not what he wants to do, though. He doesn't want more precision around the hover point. He specifically said he wants more precision at the bottom of the curve. So that's why we're pushing throttle mid all the way down. But that's the gist of it. I would start with about a 0.4 expo. You probably don't want much more than that, but it's obviously up to you. And then I would start with throttle mid at maybe 0 and push it up to the point where it's about how you want it. And then play with that. Bear in mind that if throttle expo is too high, you will get this sharp change in your hover point, in your throttle curve, that will make it difficult to control the quad. So don't make your throttle expo too high. All right. And that's how you do that. Let's get some super chats. Like I promised, we're 25 minutes into the stream, and it's time to read some super chats. Justin Rice, thank you for a $5 super chat. Any thoughts on the AGO1 being put into the DJI controller? Yeah, I have some thoughts about that. Do you guys know you can put AGO1 gimbals in the DJI controller? I didn't. But thanks to our friend, Let's Fly RC, Sean Morrison. Sean Morrison? I think that's his last name. He did a video showing how he did it. What? What? Yes! Yes, queen! Yes! So good. If you have this controller, this is a definite upgrade. But it is not without its perils. It requires some small modification, some slight modification of the plastic, and I think it also requires a 3D printed part. So you can watch this tutorial if you want to do it. Cali FPV, this is a question that people are asking. When will we get AGO1 gimbals for the Tango? I think some people don't know that the AGO1s are created by Radiomaster for Radiomaster radios. You will never get AGO1 gimbals for the Tango because it's not a Radiomaster radio. Unless, I mean, I guess theoretically Radiomaster could make aftermarket gimbals. The thing is, you can't even retrofit. Like, you can't even do it because the Tango and the Mambo gimbals have a unique design where the magnet for the Hall sensor is built, or rather, sorry, the Hall sensor is built into the circuit board. There is no electrical connection between the gimbal and the circuit board. It simply sets down onto the circuit board. There's a magnet in the gimbal that moves left, right, up, down, and the Hall sensor picks up the movements. So it's a completely different gimbal design. If you don't feel like the Tango or the Mambo gimbals are good enough for you and you want an upgrade, really TBS needs to give that to you. That's not something that, I mean, a third party theoretically could do it. But they don't. Now, people in the chat are saying that Trappy talked about releasing new gimbals. I mean, it's always nice to have all-metal upgraded gimbals. They do. Well, what I like to say is they're not going to make you a better pilot. They're not going to, like, you're not going to put those gimbals in and suddenly be able to fly better than you do. It's just more enjoyment. More, it's like, I like to say it's like sitting in a high-end car with leather upholstery. Like, it's just nice. You're not a better driver. You're just having a better time while you're there. So, stock gimbals are fine. Almost all of them are fine. There are a few examples of bad gimbals, just bad. They don't hold their center. They don't hold their endpoints, right? There are some examples of bad gimbals out there, but in general, so the stock gimbals, the Hall effect gimbals on the Radio Master or the Jumper, they're all fine, and no one is being held back by the fact that those gimbals are not like made of metal or whatever. So, Coelho FPV, thank you for a $5 super chat. Please list 2 or 3 5-inch racing frames to replace my crashed Chief V1. Well, the first place I would go is, anytime I want a parts recommendation, is fpvknowitall.com, which is my website and home of the ultimate FPV shopping list. And I would start by looking at my racing page. Best 5-inch. This is exactly what you're looking for. We'll go straight to frames. The Switchback Pro. The TBS Source 2 if you're on a budget. And the SkyReady RC Cobra are the 3 that I personally suggest. That is what I suggest. So, if that works for you, more power to you. Honestly, a lot of people, I mean, if you were flying the Chief, the Switchback Pro is very similar in a lot of ways, and is a really, really good frame. Oh, Justin Rice. Justin Rice had a second question in your super chat. All right, Justin, 2 for 1. Okay. Have you considered using those modified GoPros that you can attach Canon-type lenses to? No, I haven't. I mean, the GoPro is a very good... It's a pretty good camera. Like, it's not at the level of, you know, a DSLR. Like, there are DSLRs out there that can do better image quality. But honestly, the GoPro, if you look at the... Like, I was just working on this video. Hang on, it'll take me a second to pull it up. The image quality from a GoPro in flat color profile is pretty good. So I could see an argument that what's holding the GoPro back is its lens. Like, because you could say, if the camera is shitty, then there's no point putting a better lens on it. It's still going to be shitty. That's an argument that you could make. This is from my soon-to-release video about the GoPro Hero 10 Bones. And one of the things that I do here is look at the... Let's see here. Where are we trying to be? Yeah. So, like, right here... Now, granted, you're looking at it on a low-quality live stream. Like, right here, the dynamic range of this image is very good. Like, we've got sky in the shot. We've got trees. There's a lot of information here. And when you color grade this, which I haven't done because I'm bad at color grading, but my editor, Fabio, will color grade this, you get really good results. Like, just look at all the information in this image. Now, hang on. For perspective, here is the DJI Action 2. Look what's happening with these shadows. Look how dark these shadows are. The GoPro, I've got a side-by-side comparison right here. The GoPro is able to keep the shadow detail while the sky is also got detail. The DJI Action 2. And these are with locked ISO, locked white balance, all that stuff. The GoPro is just way, way better. It has a much better dynamic range. So I've been impressed. I've been impressed with what the GoPro can do. Hang on. And if we look here, well, that's the RunCam 5 Orange. It just sort of is what it is. Here's the DJI Action 2. And here's the GoPro. Look how much information is in this shot. Now, you may not like this color profile. You could just color grade it. I mean, that's up to you. That's the point. This is the flat color profile in the DJI Action 2. The standard color profile has even more contrast than this. This is really, the GoPro is really good. So, oops, wrong. There we go. So, yeah, I could see a point in putting an upgraded lens like a Canon lens on a GoPro, but I haven't played with it. Ghost Branch, I don't think the Action 2 supports a true log color profile. It has a Cine D or something, which is a semi-log, but it's just not very good. Ghost Branch, what you were looking at right there is the Cine color profile on the Action 2. The thing is, and now we're getting sort of deep into color theory. If you're not outputting 10 bits, if you're not outputting like, I don't know, 420 or 422, whatever, 44, I don't know. If you're not outputting 10-bit color, I'm not sure a true log color profile is really any point. I have a camera, my Lumix G85 has the ability to output a V-log, I think they call it, color profile. And we tried it, and the problem is that the shadows just get so noisy when you do that because it's only outputting 8 bits per pixel. So, Michael Carson, thanks for a $5 super chat. When I follow your instructions to a T on any subject, I always seem to be able to work out any issues, except GPS modules, which are often hit or miss. GPS modules are hit or miss. It's the GPS modules we use in this hobby are often pretty crappy, and the quads that we use are they have a lot of electrical noise, which makes the GPS modules have to work a lot harder, and they don't get locks. What's up with Betaflight 4.3 and SPI FreeSky D8 support, asks Mitch Thompson. I don't know, man. What's up? There have been some issues with SPI receiver support in Betaflight 4.3. They're usually fixed by going down to 2K, 2 kilohertz. But I would think that RC6 would have fixed that issue. So if you're still having an issue on RC6 or newer, then something else is up. There were known issues with the SPI receivers, though. Quadhala FPV, thanks for a $5 super chat. TX16S with AGO1 gimbals. My Crossfire models show negative 98 throttle. It isn't on my other modules. I calibrated and set endpoints multiple times. Quadhala, it is normal, and I don't know why this is, but this is true with every receiver protocol I've ever used. It is normal. S-Bus, Crossfire, Tracer, ExpressLS. When you first bind, that you don't get the full range. You get minus 98 to positive. So basically, I got it backwards. What you'll see is 988 to 2012 as your endpoints, and then you have to bring them in to like 97 or 98% to make the endpoints correct. So my question, Quadhala, is where are you seeing the throttle at 98%? The bottom line is go to the output screen and adjust your outputs, adjust your endpoints so they're correct. That's the bottom line. Lance, thanks for a $5 super chat. How would you mount this ESC with a capacitor taking up all this space? All right, let's look at the picture. How would you mount this ESC with a capacitor taking... Oh, this is the iFlight. So iFlight sells this ESC with this capacitor. In their frames, there's a hole in the bottom plate that capacitor fits down into. And this is official advice from iFlight. What you should do is you should simply break it off. You literally just break it off, and then you solder a new capacitor on. You just snap it off. That's what they say to do. If you're not putting it on an iFlight frame, just break it off. Jekli, thank you for a $2 super chat. New page on your website with camera setting. Ricardo Ferreira, I talked about Orca first thing on the stream. Also, they announced it on Facebook. They announced it on Facebook, so I'm not sure why people are treating it like this is breaking news. It was announced on Thursday. I mean, if it's the first you've heard of it, that's cool. They announced it on Thursday on Facebook, though, so it's not really breaking. We'll have more analysis on the FPV news on Tuesday, but I spent about 15 minutes talking about it at the top of the stream. So go back in the DVR and find it. Kendrick FPV asks, Kendrick asks, do you still recommend Brother Hobby 1504 motors for 3-inch builds? I don't know. Do I? If only there was a website where you could find the answer. FPVknowitall.com with my sub 250 gram page. And we'll go to motors. Nope. Doesn't look like I do. Doesn't look like I do. Why did they get removed? Well, the truth is, I have a call every week with a few people who we talk about this page. And one of them is Aaron Ciotti. And I roped him in because of his expertise with 3-inch Cinewhoop and micros. And most likely he made the recommendation to replace them with a different motor. But because I am not... Why is there no text for the Emax motor? Why is there no text for the Emax 1306? The fuck? Why is there no text for the 1306? My God. Oh. Where's this? Where is this card? It's in my to-do list. Oh, okay. Okay, let's put that in David's to-do list, and then it'll get added to the website. That's my fault. That's how it goes, folks. That's how it goes. It was for me to review. Ciotti sent it to me to review, and then I was the holdup, as usual. Okay, we'll get that fixed. So let's search for the 1504. Remove Brother Hobby 1504, replace with Zing 1504. Why did we do that? It doesn't say why we made that decision, though. Well, there you go. I guess we'd have to ask Ciotti why we pulled it and see if he remembers it. Okay, there you go. So no, I don't, but since this project has expanded beyond only things that I know about personally, I can't tell you why. Mr. Subs FPV, I guarantee you iFlight tells people to break that capacitor off. I would not tell you to do that if that's what their support tells people to do. It's like guarantee. Mike Wheelies, thanks for a $5 super chat. Looking to carry about 2 pounds of gear. Oh, on a quad, not in your body, on your body. Thinking, I was like, 2 pounds, that's nothing. 2 pounds of gear, thinking the Chimera 7, but which of the versions? I can't think about quadcopter weight in pounds. So first I'm going to convert to kilograms, and that is about 1 kilogram. Oh, that's not too bad. Do you mean, Mike Willies, do you mean 2 pounds of payload or 2 pounds all up? Because a 7-inch is going to be about 900 grams to 1.2 kilograms all up. At which point, carrying another kilogram of payload is iffy. I think you could do it. Like, think about a freestyle quad, right? Think about a freestyle quad. A freestyle quad is, a 5-inch freestyle quad is 400 grams for the quad, plus about 200 grams for the battery, is about 600 grams for the weight of the quad without a camera, roughly. And then we add about 180 grams to 200 grams. So let's just round to 200 grams of camera. So 200 out of 600, gosh, I can do that math in my head. I've rounded the numbers to make it easier. The payload, if you count the payload as the camera, is about 1/3 the weight of the rest of the quad. So if you wanted to carry a kilogram, right, Your dry weight, you would be roughly around 2 kilograms would be your weight without the camera. These numbers don't quite scale because a larger quad is not going to need to have the same thrust to weight ratio as a little agile 5-inch. But it feels to me like if your goal is to carry 1 kilogram of payload in a camera, basically, then a 7-inch weighing 1 kilogram is not going to be ideal. It's going to be on the edge. It might work. I don't think it won't work, but I think you probably will be looking for a 1 kilogram payload. You probably would be looking at something bigger than a 7-inch, and certainly not smaller. Bad for Life says 1 kilogram of payload is too big even for 8-inch. Yeah, I think for 1 kilogram of payload, then we'd be starting at like the 9-inch to 10-inch category. And by the time you got to 13 inches, like Beast Class, now you're fine. Now there's no question. I think 7-inch is the minimum I would go for, with like 30 millimeter or 31 millimeter motors and good tri-blade 7-inch, and you're not going to be doing crazy freestyle, but it will fly. And if you get up to 8 or 9-inch, now you're starting to get more into the range where you'd be comfortable. All right. Loop, so I didn't answer your question. Which of the 3 versions of the Chimera 7 would be better? And I don't know, because 7-inch isn't best. 7-inch isn't great for that. Now, if you're talking about the Chimera 7, which is a quadcopter, that's one thing. You could convince me that like an Octo Cinelifter 7-inch, if you built such a thing, you could convince me that that might carry 1 kilogram of payload. That's obviously got twice as many motors, though. Loops, thanks for a $10 super chat. No text in your super chat, Loops, so I hope that's intentional. Thank you for your donation. Little One-on-One, thank you for a $15 super chat. Is Crossfire Tracer able to have HD0 VTXs with backpack functionality? No, nope, it can't. I've seen people asking about this. Right now, the backpack functionality is only available with Express LRS. What is the backpack functionality? The backpack functionality means that your receiver can talk to your flight controller, and then your flight controller controls the video transmitter. Or you can actually put the receiver right on the video transmitter, right in the video receiver, in your goggles, in the module, and solder it to the module, and they can all sort of talk to each other and communicate. So, for example, when you change your video transmitter channel using the Express LRS Lua script, then your goggles also change channel. Now, I should point out, Crossfire has a similar functionality, but it only works with Crossfire. It works with the Fusion module only, Crossfire receiver, and I think any Smart Audio VTX, not just Unify, but it has to be Smart Audio. But the thing is that it only works with the Fusion receiver. You can't add, so for example, you can solder an Express LRS receiver to an HD0 module and have it be part of this backpack cloud that does all this stuff people want. So why can't you do it with a Crossfire receiver? The answer from, like, Ryan Quellet answered this question on Facebook, and I think his answer was really on point. The answer is that Express LRS has published the specifications to make a backpack receiver, and TBS can implement that functionality anytime they want. Nothing is stopping TBS from doing that except their available engineering resources and their desire to do it. So it isn't possible to do that, but I want to be really clear that that is not Express LRS or HD0's fault, because I don't want people to think that like they are being proprietary in some way. And I also don't want it to sound like I'm pointing a finger at TBS, like, how dare you not do this? It's their, I mean, they could do it. They haven't done it. There are many things in the world. I could have gone for a 10-mile run this morning. I didn't. I sat at home and ate coffee and, drank coffee and ate donuts or whatever. Like, there are many things we could do that we don't do because for various reasons we don't want to do them. Doesn't make me a bad person. So I don't want it to sound like I'm blasting TBS either, but you can't do it today. I'm gonna need a drink before the end of the stream, that's for sure. We're gonna keep pushing through. It's the allergies. One Pack Jack, thank you for a $5 super chat. Isn't all GoPro footage stabilized? No. No, you go into the GoPro and you turn stabilization off and then it's not stabilized, right? I mean, you can tell. Here's how you can tell, Jack. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you this. I don't know if I have footage that will demonstrate this, but here's how to tell if footage is stabilized, you guys. I don't have any footage with props in view. That's going to make this harder. What about the Action 2? Has ultra-wide field of view. Surely it has props in view. No, for real though. How are the props not in view on a field of view this wide? I can't believe it. What about the GEP-RC Mark V? That's only going to be in the... Damn it. That's only going to be in the DVR. I don't know if I have... Do I have the DVR saved? I do. Is props in view? Come on, baby. Props in view. Yes. Okay. So anytime you have props in view, so here are my props right here. You can always tell if the footage is stabilized because the props will move in the frame. Okay? The props will move around in the frame. So as we watch this flight, notice that the props are exactly in the same place in the frame every time. Now, actually, I'm just looking, and I do see a tiny bit of wobbling on this blue prop, and the reason for that is that the prop is bent. But you can see, oh, that wasn't me, that must have been Max. Because, oh yeah, this is clearly audience mode. I was going to say, that yaw spin was a little too on point to be me. Whoop, joop, nice. But if stabilization is on, you'll see the props moving around in the frame, and that's how you do it. You can also look right when someone lands, right after they set down. Oh, I crashed in a tree. It doesn't really count. But right after they land, does he land or does he crash? Or crash? Hello? No? Oh, I see. Damn it. Have we not got any landings? Okay, so right after they crash, boom, right there, as the quad comes to a standstill, the next thing that will happen is that the ground will go slightly, and that tells you stabilization was turned on. Whereas here, do you see how it comes to a rest, and the ground is just completely stationary? There's no shifting. That also tells you stabilization is off. So no, the question we're answering is, isn't all GoPro footage stabilized? The answer is no, clearly not. Trail features. Thank you for a $5 super chat. Any thoughts on HD0 taking their firmware software open source? I think it's good. I have talked about it. We talked about it on the news, and I talked about it also on last week's live stream, so I kind of don't want to rehash that whole conversation. But I think it's good, but they have to attract a community of developers who want to work on it. And their attitude, when a company makes a project open source and really means it, it tends to attract developers who want to work on it. And when a company takes a project open source and then tries to keep clamped down and keep control, it tends to scare developers off. That's not... Oh, and then the third thing that happens is when a company clamps down on a project and doesn't take it open source, then developers crack it open like a freaking piñata and have a field day thumbing their nose. And that's DJI. That's not HD0. But I just wanted to acknowledge there's a third option there. 661FPV says, Tony Cake says it's not really open source because the hardware is still closed source and uses an ASIC. That's... don't... I mean, you have to consider the source. Can you please consider the source? I'm 661 FPV. I'm not accusing you of anything like not doing that, but anytime Tony Cake comments, and I just, in case you just got here, I spent like 5 minutes at the beginning of the stream talking about what a smart, amazing, great guy Tony Cake is. So there's no beef here. But whenever he talks about Express LRS or HD0 or DJI, consider the source. Consider the source. He is not, he says the things that he thinks are true, but his priorities are not always the same as yours. One of the smartest things someone once told me, he was an instructor. And he was a firearms instructor, for what it's worth. And he said, whenever anybody gives you advice or training, consider the source. And what he meant was you have to think about the context that the person brings to the situation. And if their context is not the same as yours, their priorities are not the same as yours, then the advice they're giving you may not be right for you. It's great advice. So anytime Tony Cake talks about this stuff, take it with a grain of salt and ask yourself about his priorities and his context that he's bringing to the conversation. This is just BS, though. The hardware is closed source and uses an ASIC. I mean, where do you want to draw the line, right? It is open source if they publish, and this is all a big if, because we don't know what they're going to do because they haven't done it yet. But if they publish the source for the firmware, giving you full sort of driver level control of the ASIC and allowing third-party open source developers to come in there and just get their hands dirty and do whatever they want to do, if they publish the hardware designs that show how to use the ASIC, I mean, that's like saying that Express LRS is not open source because it uses the Semtech chip, the LoRa chip, right? That Semtech chip, you have to buy that from Semtech. Is Express LRS not open source because it includes a piece of hardware that isn't fully open sourced? No, that's nonsense. That's complete nonsense. I mean, he would probably say, but even if it is, it's a semantic argument. Is it really open source? Who cares? Is it in compliance with the license that it's released under? The GPL, which is one of the most restrictive open source licenses, has provisions built in for closed source drivers, for example. You can release an open source project that includes closed source proprietary drivers, and it doesn't violate the GPL. So obviously you can release an open source project that includes hard ASICs that are not open sourced. That's just a nonsense argument. Now, 61 FPV, to be fair, we should acknowledge that you may not be fully representing Tony's argument. So I'm really responding to your comment here, not what Tony said. But we got an example here from Hella G's in the Discord showing what the moving props looks like. This is... Oh, I can't play your music, though. This is what stabilized footage looks like. Maybe we'll see some cool freestyle while we're at it. I love office parks. Knoxville, I love you, Knoxville, but you have shitty office parks. Did you see how it started to move before he even preloaded? Watch the props as he preloads. Here's the props. Watch the props as he preloads. Do you see that the props right there moved up in the screen? That's the stabilization at work. He's begun to lean forward to take off, and the stabilization is taking that out. And here we go. Now watch, you'll see the props moving up and down. So good. I love office parks. Oh, whoops. Looked like you were going to dive there, but then you kind of missed. A little too much on the throttle? A little too high idle? Oh, maybe it was on purpose. Anyway, you can see the props moving into and out of view. This is stabilization at work. And this is why, if anybody wants to do freestyle with stabilization, a lot of the time, there we go, you finally got it. Good. A lot of times they will go out of their way to make sure the props are not in view because they don't want to call attention to the fact that they're using stabilization, or they just find it distracting. Now, Mike Bergman says the props weren't spinning yet, though. Yes, I know. because the way stabilization works, Mike, is that it is looking into the past and it's buffering the footage and looking into the future. So even though the quad hadn't started tipping forward yet, the stabilization algorithm began to shift the field of view. That's how stabilization works. The image started moving before the quad started moving. That's how stabilization works. Isn't that crazy? It spreads out the movement. So instead of happening sharply at once, it begins sooner and ends later. Yep. Why is it moving when the props aren't spinning? That's the stabilization at work. That's amazing, isn't it? All right. PDXFPV asks, why is the Atto bigger than the Zepto if they have the same performance? Is it bigger so it's easier to work with? PDXFPV, I think the Atto, the Zepto has a different voltage regulator on board. I think they have a different voltage input is one difference, and the Atto's voltage is bigger. Because Tony was just asking about redesigning the Atto and getting feedback. Do we have specs here? V, come on. Where's my voltage range? Fine. User's manual. Is this going to tell me what I need to know? Yeah, come here. Do you not have specs for the daggone... Can I just have the daggone voltage spec for the dang receiver? Why is this so... Specifications. That's where this should be. Specifications. Where is the input voltage? Oh, here it is. Okay. Sorry. Found it. It's here. I've got to dial down my annoyance. 5 volt recommended, no more than 5.5 for the Atto. Is the Zep... Well, that's... I take it back then. Because the Zepto is surely 5.5. There you go. I don't know what the difference is. Good question. Empire sim time equals sick time in the Discord. Good username. Says, do you think you could run lower than the 5.5% idle speed on the motors? What would be the downside to that? Yeah, you can, Empire. The exact speed you can tolerate depends on your motors and your ESC, but typically you can get down to about 3% and they don't stall on a 5-inch. The downside of lower idle is that eventually they'll stall and your quad will fall out of the air. So as long as they keep moving and don't stall, you're fine. What I would tell you to do, though, in Betaflight 4.3 is instead of using static idle, whoops, there we go. Instead of using static idle, go into the PID tuning tab and change the, change the dynamic idle setting here. It's a little hard to see, I think. Maybe I can zoom in a little. Yeah. So set dynamic idle, and I suggest around, the Betaflight suggests around 3,000 to 3,500 to start with. You may be able to go a little lower. So it allows you to have, it basically has a PID controller for the motor RPM. For the, well, only when you're going to idle, not when you're actually flying, but and it'll allow you to run lower idle with less risk of desync. So that's what I suggest you do. If you want to lower your idle speed. Mouse FPV says 20 is where it's at for that option. I also have been running 20 on my 5 inches for the record. And yes, that's for a 5-inch. different prop sizes will spin at different RPMs and have a different optimal value. Mouse, do you know any reference for like different recommended RPM value for different prop sizes and KVs? Empire asks, lower idle speed has a lot of advantages, right? Well, it has advantages and disadvantages. So the lower your idle speed is, the less torque the motor is going to have, right? Because at lower RPM, the motor has less torque. So, for example, there are some pilots who intentionally raise their idle speed because it helps with prop wash oscillation in sharp turns. If you don't care about your hang time, for example, like racers. I've known racers who raise their idle speed to 7 or 9% because it significantly smoothed out their turns. Not that the higher idle speed itself smoothed out the turns, but the fact that the motor stayed in an RPM region where it had more torque let the motor be more responsive and respond to prop wash oscillation better. So, freestyle pilots tend to want the lowest idle they can get so that when they're doing like an inverted hang, they stay higher longer. And so like if you're doing a building dive or a tunnel dive, you don't get pulled offline as aggressively. So that's the downside of an excessively low idle. When your motors get down to a low RPM, they get into this extremely low torque region. Think about this. Think about this. If you were to hold your motor, if the motor was spinning at like, you know, idle speed, and you were to just reach down and stick your finger in the prop, it would just stop, right? Don't do this. It would just stop though, because the motor has no torque down low. But if you had the motor at 60% throttle and you stuck your finger in the prop, it would injure you. The motor has more torque, not just more RPM at higher throttle, and so it has more authority. Mustang Pilot wants to know, thank you Mustang Pilot for a $20 super chat. That's a big super chat, appreciate it. Which antenna for the DJI V1 goggle is optimum? How would it be different for the V2? Mustang Pilot, assuming you are not flying the DJI FPV drone, there is no difference between the V1 and the V2 goggle. The optimal antenna. The DJI FPV drone can use 2.4 gigahertz, and the DJI goggle V2 can use 2.4 gigahertz when it is used with the DJI FPV drone. But if you're just talking about air units and vistas, there's no difference. What's the best antenna for long range? I mean, if what you mean is long range, like literally just flying up in the sky, the iFlight Crystal or the Luminaire Axi HD can, Wesley Vardy has demonstrated this, they can hit the edge of the 13-kilometer range, and after that, the DJI system won't go any further. It won't go past like 13.3 kilometers. It just shuts off. So if you can hit 13.3 kilometers with the iFlight Crystal, or the Luminaire Axi HD, sounds like that's a great choice. Now, if you want higher bit rate or more penetration while still being within that 13-kilometer limit, you could go to something like the VAZ Cyclops. The VAZ Cyclops is a higher gain antenna. And then beyond that, you start thinking about putting even higher gain antennas, but it gets really unwieldy. The TBS Diamond TX antenna is better over the Immortal TX antenna, and why? Assuming focusing game. I don't know if the Diamond is better. I believe the TBS Diamond was created to try and fix some issues in the beam pattern of the standard antenna. Like there was a where was this documented? There was like a null in the antenna pattern. Basically, the Diamond has a little bit more direct. We see here in the product page. This is fine. Yes. Okay. I'm not crazy. Here it is. A few pilots were experiencing dropouts at what seemed to be random times. I investigated 4 cases and found that all the dropouts were happening at the same relative azimuth. There was a null between the 0 and 5 and 15 to 20 degree azimuth. It was a problem with the ground they were standing on. I designed an antenna that resisted the effect of ground but tracked along the ground for low altitude flying. This was a TBS diamond antenna. So that is the pro and con of that antenna. Personally, I find I don't like removing my antenna when I put it in the bag, and so I usually just fly the standard one, and it has enough range for me. Yeah, Pans rocks. That's exactly right. The diamond is for when you're flying further out and relatively low to the ground. If you're flying high up and closer in, then the standard antenna is better. Question here from Pistols YT. Pistols YT. Thank you for a $5 super chat. I hard bricked 2 TX16S no bootloader and refuses to flash. How? Why? I don't get it. I firmly believe that you didn't hard brick them. That if I were to plug them into my computer, they would come up in DFU mode and be fine. Now, I could be wrong. Bad things happen to good people, and maybe you got unlucky. But I firmly believe if you, Pistols, if you mail them to me, I mean, don't do this. Talk to Radio Master Support, get them to fix it for you. But if you decide you want to do this, if you mail them to me, I will plug them into my computer and see what happens. And I'll record the result. And I'll make a video about the result. And the video will be, this guy said he bricked his TX16S. Let's see what happens. And I won't name you, but anybody watching this live stream will remember who you were. So I mean, take that as it will. And then if they're dead, frankly, if they're dead, I won't even release the video because there's no point in releasing a video to say, oh, these were dead and I couldn't fix them. But if I'm able to fix them, maybe I'll release the video and say, hey, they seemed to be dead, but then here's how we fixed them. So if you want to take me up on that offer, email me, joshuabardwell@gmail.com. You pay postage. I'm not going to go out of pocket for this. It's up to you. The DFU bootloader is very difficult to actually permanently destroy. If you really had a TX16S where bootloader was truly bricked, then it would make me think your main board was bad, in which case Radio Master should fix it. And how did you kill 2 main boards? I have no idea. But the most likely scenario here is something has gone wrong with your DFU driver on your computer. And if you're like, no, I know what I'm doing, I fixed that. Well, okay, I don't know. Anyway, there you go. All right. Okay. We're caught up on Super Chats. So, if you want to ask a question, now's the time to ask it. 661FPV, I did make a video a while back about how I would save a bricked radio, and I wasn't able to fix it, and the conclusion was that was hardware damage. I mean, I think that was my conclusion. I'm not saying hardware damage is impossible. I'm just saying it's more likely that someone out there doesn't know how to set up the DFU driver, which is, to be fair, can be pretty annoying, or doesn't know how to flash their radio. That is more likely than that somebody has 2 dead radios that were just strangely dead for no reason. Seth Strawn wants to know, do you have a video on best practices for tiny whoop batteries? The first thing to know about tiny whoop batteries is that if you don't run them all the way down to like 3.1 or even 3.0 volts, you will get terrible flight time. Tiny whoop batteries, even the good ones, sag a lot. So they'll start at 4.35 volts. As soon as you start flying, they'll go down to like 4.0 volts. And after just 30 or 45 seconds of flying, they'll be down in the 3.8 volt range That is not everybody's experience, but it is a pretty common experience. You really have to run them all the way down to get decent flight times out of them. Now, if you're doing a race and the race is 2 laps, and when you finish 2 laps, you're at 3.8 volts, that's fine. But most people like to fly for 3 or 4 minutes, maybe, and you just have to really roast those batteries to do that, especially if you're flying hard. So the first thing to know is that on a typical LiPo, you have to run them down to maybe 3.5 volts, and then you stop and you let them recover and you charge them up again or switch batteries. But for tiny whoop batteries, if you stop at 3.5, you're going to get very short flight time. And that is especially true if you are not using the really, really good tiny whoop batteries. If you're just using sort of mediocre ones, then you really got to run them down. So that's the first thing. You need to know that your voltage threshold is a little bit different. You should always store them at storage voltage. You can use something like the Flying Sandal board or the Fractal Engineering board. Here's the Flying Sandal. Hang on. And here's the Fractal. So here is the Flying Sandal parallel charging board. Here's the Whoop Juice Fractal. Both of these boards do the same thing. They let you plug your tiny whoop batteries into your big LiPo charger, and that gives you access to storage mode, which tiny whoop chargers typically don't have. There's also a charger called the V-Fly Whoop Store, and it has a built-in storage mode, which is very desirable. So store your batteries at 3.8 volts at storage voltage to maximize their lifespan. Those are some good recommendations. When can we get a new freestyle edit? Asked that guy Carlos. I've been working on an edit with this new obstacle in my yard, so maybe soon. 6SFPV, thank you for a £9 super chat. My 7-inch dropped out of the sky, and I now have 100% errors on ESC number 2. It flies perfect with multi-shot or anything other than bidirectional D-shot. Is it safe to fly it on multi-shot? No. I don't know why it has 100% errors when you turn on bidirectional D-shot, but seems to work when you fly it on multi-shot. The thing is, the thing with bidirectional D-shot is that you will know exactly how many errors you're getting. With something like multi-shot, you could be getting a ton of missing data or corrupted data and kind of not know, and the motor seems to work okay. But if it fell out of the sky and it has 100% errors on ESC2, I wouldn't. Why would you trust it again? You're lucky you didn't lose the quad. You're lucky you didn't, drop it somewhere you couldn't get it back. You're lucky you didn't break your GoPro or whatever. You lucked out. You had a motor, or an ESC rather. You had an ESC die in flight, and now the quad's back, and you're like, can I fly it again? No, you gotta figure out what happened. It sounds like the ESC died. I would not fly it on multi-shot. Never mind the fact that it's going to fly worse on multi-shot. FPJV, I think the storage voltage is the same for LIHV and LiPo. LIHV, in my opinion, is just a standard LiPo cell that has been engineered to go to a higher voltage, but I believe that the storage voltage is the same for them. Sean Bylan, thank you for a $5 super chat. For the most flight time, is there a % of throttle rule of thumb to get an idea when increasing battery capacity will not increase flight time? Sean, the rule of thumb, in my opinion, is that the battery weight for a freestyle quad should be about half the dry weight. So talking about a 5-inch quad, you got a 400-gram quad with a 200-gram battery-ish, roughly. If you have a 250-gram quad, now that's your all-up weight. So the way to go there is to take 30%. So if your all-up weight is 250 grams, then just take times 0.33. You got about an 83-gram battery. Well, yeah. So that's only a starting point. That's not a hard and fast rule. Going up to about half the weight of the quad, you will get some increase in flight time at the expense of agility of the all-up weight. So you could theoretically have a 800-gram quad all up with a 400-gram battery. It's a 400-gram quad with a 400-gram battery. That's pretty extreme. That's like 400 grams is a rule of thumb for a dry weight for a 5-inch. A 400-gram battery would be like 3,000 milliamp hours, 4S, roughly. That's a pretty big battery. So somewhere between 33% and 50% of the all-up weight for the battery, and beyond that, you're getting into the it's pointless category. Because even if you got extended flight time, it'll just fly so badly that it's not worth it. Archimedes, if you've got a charger that has a storage voltage at 3.85 for LIHV, that may be. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. Because I don't think that LIHV is actually a different chemistry. So, like, if you're talking about LIFE versus LiPo versus nickel metal hydride, those are fundamentally different battery chemistries with fundamentally different nominal voltage and storage voltage. But an LIHV is, in my humble opinion, just a LiPo that has been rated to go above 4.2 volts. And in some cases, they make some changes to the battery chemistry or the battery construction to try to make it take less damage. So there's a certain type of damage that occurs when you go above 4.2 volts. And they make some changes to the battery construction. But it doesn't fundamentally change the storage voltage being 3.8 volts. That's my opinion. If a battery manufacturer says differently, then fine. But I'm not convinced that just because some chargers say that LIHV storage is 3.85, I'm not convinced that's actually based in reality. So. Archimedes says his toolkit RC had 3.85 for LiPo. See, that's not even right. 3.8 for LiPo. That's just true. Okay. How long after use before needing to put in storage, asks GMI Visuals. GMI Visuals, it is entirely a question of accumulated damage. So the longer the battery is at full charge, the more damage it will accumulate over time. It's not like at 23 hours and 59 minutes, you have no damage. And at 24 hours, boom, suddenly the battery's damaged. It's cumulative. So from the moment you charge your battery to 4.2 volts, it begins degrading. And all of the time that it is at 4.2 volts, it is slowly accumulating that degradation. So the question is, how long can you afford to leave your batteries at full charge before enough damage accumulates that you notice the reduced performance? Or, so like, let's say that you're a racer and you typically get 20 packs off your batteries before you just destroy them by smashing them into a gate. Well, don't bother with storage voltage. It's not going to matter. Because a month from now, it'll have exploded anyway. You won't notice the difference. I don't really mean that. You should still put them at storage voltage. 3 days, 4 days, 2 days, 1 day. There is no hard rule, is my point. You just have to decide how long you're comfortable with and know that the longer you leave them at full voltage, the more damage they're going to accumulate. But also, discharging them accumulates damage too. So there's a bit of a trade-off. I don't think there's a full answer there. Steve Jobs asks, does the battery also get damaged if you leave it depleted? Yes. Yes, absolutely. 3.8 volts is where you want them to be, where they take minimal damage. And here's the thing. At 3.8 volts, as long as they're in a reasonable temperature, like they're not sitting in a, 120 degree car or something. That's Fahrenheit. Sorry, you're everyone else in the whole world. As long as they're not sitting at, 30 degrees Celsius and they're cooking, right? As long as they're at reasonable room temperature and 3.8 volts, they can actually sit that way for a really long time without taking any damage. Seth Strawn asks, if I don't have a way to get my batteries to storage voltage, is it better to store them high or low? Why don't you have the ability to get them to storage voltage? Why does your charger not have a storage charge mode? It should. GMI Visuals, I personally would not leave my batteries at 3.6 volts for 4 days if I could avoid it. 3.6 volts is too low. 3.8 volts is where they need to be. H4 Quad 6 says, but LiPos have a short lifespan. They don't. They only have a short lifespan because we abuse them and don't treat them right. LiPos can go for 500 or 800 cycles if properly maintained. I mean, think about your cell phone. Maybe not the best example. Think about your cell phone. How many charge cycles does your cell phone battery have on it? I mean, after a little while, yes, it does go down. But you'll get, 2 years of use off a cell phone, and you'll still, that for me at least, 2 or 3 years is about where my cell phone, I start going, man, I don't know, I'm starting to really notice that the battery's declining. So how many charge cycles is that? Is that 300, 400, 500, 600? It's a lot of charge cycles, is my point. LiPos can last a really long time. Got a few more super chats coming in. Yeah, no, I would not leave it at 3.6, though. 3.6 is no good. You want to be at 3.8. Archimedes, are you telling me that on the Toolkit RC M6D, the storage voltage for LIHV is 3.9 to 4.1? That, I mean, you already told me it was Toolkit RC, and I'm not, like, I have some quibbles with them. I don't believe it. The fact that the charger says it doesn't make it right, man. Storage, I don't believe storage voltage for LIHV. I don't believe that LIHV is a different chemistry than an LiPo, so it doesn't have a different storage voltage. It's 3.8. I stand by that. Until an actual battery manufacturer tells me different, and then I will change my tune. But until now, yeah. Don Dupuis says, I don't see you referring to percentage because there is no such thing as percentage. Volts is the only thing that there actually is. There is no percentage. Battery percentage is a myth perpetrated to try to, I don't know, because they think you're too dumb to think about volts. Well, I'm insulted and you should be insulted too. Percent doesn't mean anything. Volts, think about volts. Volts is what matters. For a lithium polymer battery, 3.8 volts is the storage voltage. See how easy that was? You got it. Okay, let's get a couple more of these super chats. Anthony DiStefano says, I have a Flywoo Firefly HD, and I was hanging the tiny drone on my wall using 2 nails and neodymium magnets on the nail heads, and then stick to the bottom 2 front motors. Now they don't spin. Did the magnets damage my motors? That's a very interesting question. Do you guys think that, does it work like that? If you were to take your motors and put them next to a really strong neodymium magnet for days and days and days, would that, like, demagnetize the magnet or change its magnetic field? Does it work like that? Like, I know you can magnetize metal by rubbing it on a magnet. If you were to, could you change the magnetic field of a magnet in the same way? It feels like that's not, like, preposterous. But I don't know. I don't know. It feels like that's the kind, because a magnetic field is the orientation of, like, particles in the metal. And so that can change. Interesting. It feels like that's possible, but I don't know. Gadget RC says you'd have to heat it up or vibrate it to kill the particle orientation. I don't know. Like, I would say no, that's not possible. If you, like, said, I need to know right now, is it possible? Stake your whole reputation on it. I would say, no, I don't think so. But, like, it's not the dumbest or the weirdest thing I've ever heard. Like, for example, motors in a factory. They store them in stacks and boxes. All those magnets are next to each other. Does that make a problem? I don't think so. I don't know, but the motor seems like it's dead, so you're definitely going to have to replace the motor. G, thank you for £8.99. I'm using Crossfire 150 Hertz preset in Betaflight. It now reads 60-ish instead of 99. What am I missing? Were you talking about LQ or RSSI? Regardless, G, the preset won't change your LQ. So if your LQ or your RSSI has gotten worse, that's separate from the Betaflight preset. My guess is that you just upgraded to 4.3, and the way that you're getting LQ or RSSI into the goggles or into the flight controller has changed. Like right now, you're actually reading RSSI instead of a hybrid LQ RSSI via an aux channel. That's my guess. Robert Andrews, thanks for a $10 super chat. What would be the benefits of a 250 milliwatt internal ExpressLRS module versus an internal multi and an external 1 watt? Robert, the big reason to get the internal ExpressLRS is if you have no intention of using FreeSky, FlySky, Spectrum, etc. If you are 100% done with those, no tiny whoops, no nothing, then you get the ExpressLRS module internal, and you put your Crossfire, your Ghost, your Tracer in the external, and now you've doubled up, okay? The disadvantage of the external ExpressLRS module is that you got to take it out if you want to switch to Ghost, Crossfire, Tracer. Now, if you're 100% ExpressLRS, then you should get the internal 4-in-1 and the 1 watt external, and then you got more output power, which I think we all agree is good. Public Name, thank you for a $3 super chat. Robert Lee, thank you for a $10 super chat. Today is the day, boys. I'm leaving analog behind. The maiden flight of my Rotor Riot Skyliner Pro Spec. Congratulations, Robert. Congratulations. Crunked says, that's dumb. It should be a multi-module internally, not just ExpressLRS. I have talked about this, and I'll talk about it again, because people still seem to not realize what's going on here. Yes, obviously, we would all like it if it was a 5-in-1 module with ExpressLRS and then all the 4-in-1. Obviously, everybody would like that. The reason that we can't do that is because that would require either OpenTX to support 2 different internal modules, which it doesn't. So OpenTX has no functionality for switching between internal modules. It can switch from internal to external or external to internal. That is it. So either OpenTX has to support 2 different modules, an internal Express LRS and an internal 4-in-1, or the Pascal Langer 4-in-1 project has to incorporate the entire Express LRS code base into itself. And then you get a full 5-in-1. And that's not going to work for anybody. That's too complicated. Because then Pascal Langer and Express LRS would be like, they would be so entangled, it would be a nightmare. Does EdgeTX support multiple internal modules? Ghost Branch? I don't think it supports more than one at a time. I don't think it supports more than one at a time, but I could be wrong about that. Public Name did send a question with your super chat. Well, like, you didn't, but it's an easy mistake to make. How do I record on my air unit? I only have a DJI air unit, DJI goggles, no flight controller, no arming mode. I am using a fixed wing. You can't, what you have to do, Public Name, is turn temperature protection off in your goggles. It's in device settings. It's near where you set the output power. Turn temperature protection off, and then you'll be able to record even though you don't have a flight controller. That's what you need to do, Public Name. Tom Weich, thank you for a $5 super chat. Timeline for the HDO2 replacement. I've been debating Sky 04X and HDO2 with Crossfire for weeks. How much better is Crossfire over the 04X? I'm sorry, what? Rapid Fire? You mean Rapid Fire, not Crossfire. No one knows. Has Fat Shark even confirmed that they're working on an HDO2 replacement? They haven't, as far as I know. Joe B4 Eiley, the goggles will not let you start recording with temperature protection enabled. You have to, I see, Public Name is, I see. Yeah, temperature protection off, and then just press the record button on the goggles. Sorry, Joe B. You had it correct. My bad. So, Tom Weich, surely Fat Shark is working on something. We don't know what it is or when it will come, and we don't know whether it will be what it will be. What will it be? If Fat Shark releases a replacement for the HDO2, what will it be? What could it possibly be? Is it going to be a new analog goggle to compete with Orca? What could Fat Shark release? So right now, the HDO2 is at like $500, $550. The Orca is just a little bit more than that. And like, the Orca is better in almost every way, but a little more expensive. So Fat Shark's sort of slotted in there. What's Fat Shark going to do? Is Fat Shark going to release a goggle that's better than the Orca at a higher price point? I'm skeptical. So is it going to be a new HD0 goggle? Extremely skeptical. Fat Shark has moved away from HD0. So, like, if there was a replacement for the HDO2 coming, what would it be that would make you feel excited? That's the big question. What would it be? It's hard for me to imagine something that Fat Shark would make that would make me feel super excited. It feels like, in a lot of ways, analog goggles have peaked. And what I mean by that is, where do they have... Look at the top of the line analog goggles that exist today. Orca FPV, HDO2 from Fat Shark, SkyZone Sky 04X. Those are really the top of the line analog goggles today. What would you change about those goggles to make them better? What are you going to do? You're going to go to a 4K screen? Why? Who cares? It's 1280 by 960 resolution. That's already more resolution than you need for analog. And frankly, more than you need for HD0 if that's what you're into. So what are they going to do? OLED screens. Got them. What are you going to do? Bigger screens? Maybe. My point is that analog goggles have reached the sort of end of this generation. And the other thing to keep in mind is the top of the line analog goggles are already more expensive than most people are willing to pay for the experience that they deliver. If you said, here's a goggle, it's going to give you a 4K FPV link, 4K, true 4K resolution, 20 millisecond latency, and 5 miles of range. But it's going to be $1,500. Like, many people would not be able to afford that, but many people would say, I mean, look at what you're getting. The value proposition on analog goggles today, top of the line goggles, you're paying $500+. And I just, there's two things going on here. I don't think that analog goggles have a lot of room to get any more expensive than they are. In fact, they're already, I think, a little too expensive for most people, but obviously not all people, because like the Orca is still sold out. So, what do I know? But the other thing is that where do they have the room to improve? What has Orca done to make the goggles better? They haven't improved on the optics. They haven't improved on the receiver technology. They're still using rapid fire. What they've improved on is the interface and the side features to make a better to use goggle. Fat Shark could do that. Theoretically they could, if they had the resources. I question whether they have the resources, especially now that Tony Cake and Immersion RC have left, since I think a lot of the Fat Shark's engineering came from Tony. So we got into this discussion by Tom Weich asking about the timeline for the HDO2 replacement. And I'm like, never? Or when it comes, it's going to be the HDO 2.5, and it's going to be a very incremental refresh. That's my opinion. Now, I would love to be wrong, but that's my opinion. I think Fat Shark's smartest move is to keep selling the HDO2. If Fat Shark could develop a goggle with a modern interface and feature set similar to the Orca, then they should totally do it. And then sell it for the same price as the HDO2, or maybe a little more. But that's about it. I just don't think there's a lot of places to go with analog goggles. And Orca has done it. And SkyZone has done it in a lot of ways. When Fat Shark was partnering with HD Zero, I thought this is going to be really good for the future of Fat Shark, because analog is at the end of its, there's just nowhere to go with it in a lot of ways. And HD Zero is a way forward for Fat Shark. And then Fat Shark was like, HD Zero, this guy's a pain in the ass. And then they just backed out, and they're like, okay, well, what are you going to do next then? And I just don't know what it is. Okay. Aerobrat says, I hope they're working on an affordable HD system that's better than DJI. I hope they're working on a magic unicorn that brings me coffee and gives me back massages with its little unicorn hooves anytime I would need them. I mean, we can hope, but I don't think that's very realistic. Not. Flash FPV, thank you. Oh, sorry. There was a little bit more to Tom Weich's question. How much better is rapid fire over the O4X? It's a little better. The O4X rapid mix mode is close to as good. Tweet FPV says, why would you go Fat Shark? I guess we're going to keep dogging on Fat Shark a little bit. Orca has surpassed them. The only thing people were concerned about was repair and customer service, and that is excellent from Orca. Yeah, Fat Shark has gotten worse, and Orca has been proven themselves to be good at customer service. So Orca does customer service out of Croatia, but and this is not just me. I have had this experience, but if you go, well, that's just because you're a YouTuber. No, everyone I've talked to has the same experience. You call and you put in a trouble ticket, and then they send you a DHL label, and like a DHL truck shows up at your address tomorrow and picks up your goggles. And then like 2 days later, they're in Croatia and they're fixing them. And then how long it takes to fix them depends on various things, but then they turn them around and they send them back. It's really completely seamless. So yeah. And Fat Shark has gotten worse. I've heard more and more complaints about slow. I mean, I try to keep my ear to the ground. And Fat Shark, it used to be that you just didn't hear very many complaints about their customer service. You send an email, Randy Ram answers you. Is the guy's name really Randy Ram? You know, Randy means like Randy, you know, like horny. Is his name really Randy Ram? Like a male sheep. His name is Randy Ram. If that's true, then I apologize for noticing that it has that connotation. No offense intended, Randy. But it used to be that you email Fat Shark support and then boom, you just get answers quick and your turnaround was quick. And I've heard more and more complaints that they don't get answers or it takes forever. Or Willpower FPV says Randy Ram was Mickey Rourke's character in The Wrestler. I did not know that. Well, this Randy guy must have borrowed his name. Flush FPV, thank you for a $5 super chat. What's the difference between left-hand and right-hand polarized? How are they used in broadcasting and receiving? Flush FPV, I've got a video I want to refer you to. I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to refer you to this video. Left versus right circular polarization, which is better? I made a video about this which goes into more detail than I'm going to go into here on the stream, but you can check out that video if you want to. The bottom line is that the antenna needs to match between the goggle and the quad. The transmitting antenna is left, the receiving antenna needs to be left, and vice versa. Neither is better than the other. If you have left-hand antennas on your system, you will get less interference if someone near you has right-hand antennas on their system. So a lot of times in racers, you'll see the seats on the race go left-hand, right-hand, left-hand, right-hand, left-hand, right-hand to minimize interference. All right. Unicorn massage. I don't think you really want a massage from a unicorn, to be honest. Those little hooves would be pretty painful. I don't know. Gamma Gonad says, I would go with the Orcas, but the FOV is way too small. The 38-ish degree field of view on the FPV Pilot, I find usable, but I'm annoyed that it's not bigger. The 33-degree field of view on the new 533 racing version, I mean, presumably that's what Evan Turner is going to be flying. So, I mean, who am I to say it's not okay? But I just find that number kind of, I'm like, really? 33? I don't know about that. Good enough for Evan Turner. I guess it should be good enough for you. Morton Upshot asks, what would you recommend as a second VRX on the Sky 04L? Morton, the quadversity function only works with the rapid mix receivers. You cannot put two rapid fires in the Sky 04 in the Sky Zone goggles, for example. You can't put a rapid fire in a fusion. Well, you can, it just won't work, right? If you want to do quadversity, you have to have Sky Zone modules. But I think you'll get better results just going with a single rapid fire if that's the direction you want to go. My FPV journey. I'm so glad you asked. What's the cheapest tiny whoop you'd suggest for a noob? I have a Spectrum radio. Oh, that's going to kill me. They have built-in Spectrum. Okay, so start by buying a different radio. No, I'm sorry. I apologize. That's insulting and offensive. Let me take this opportunity to show you a new page on my website, Tiny Whoop. We have a new page just about tiny whoops. And there are some suggestions for where you can get started. Now, your question, I'm going to guess you want a bind and fly RTF type. You want cheap. We're going to start with, see, here's the problem. I guess it's going to be Beta FPV. If you want Spectrum built in, does anybody do that other than Beta FPV anymore? Ben Ballantine, Fly Sky and Free Sky are not the same. Out of stock, it doesn't matter. Who does Spectrum bind and flies? Does anybody do those anymore? I think Beta is the only one. I think I don't know. Let's look at the Meteor 65 Pro. Only Express LRS, all right. Meteor 65 not Pro. Nope. I don't know where to point you, my friend. I really think you're going to need to... Yeah, no. I really think you're going to need to get a different receiver and not use your Spectrum radio. Happy Model has Spectrum. Let's try this. Let's go to Banggood. Banggood usually has all the different variants. Really? But your search is absolute trash. There we go. So here's Mobula 6 Express LRS. No. Mobula 6 Fly Sky, Free Sky. No. Yeah, I think you are going to struggle to find one with a Spectrum receiver, unfortunately. I'm certainly struggling. So I think you should think about whether to continue with that. Tiny Hawk? I think you should think hard about whether to continue with that radio. I'm really sure that Beta FPV and Happy Model used to come with Spectrum, but it doesn't seem like they do anymore. Is Happy Model still, or Tiny Hawk rather? Bind and fly. That's just with a D8 micro receiver. No. Nope. I'm afraid you're out of luck, man. You're gonna need a different radio if you're looking for, or you're gonna need what Spectrum receiver is small enough to put on a whoop though? I can't think of one. I don't think there is one. Race Day Quads has a Mobula 6 with DSMX. Does it? Choose your RX. Free Sky, Fly Sky. No Spectrum. Mobula 6. Choose your version and receiver. DSMX. Finally found it. Okay. In stock. This is it. This is the only one. All right. I just spent like 5 minutes looking for this, so I'm going to throw you an affiliate code. There it is. That's the one. Can't you put Crossfire on a Spectrum transmitter? Only the DX9 or higher. Oh, you got about 10 minutes left in the stream. Does anybody know if Ciati is going to be streaming today? Is Ciati streaming today, folks? I don't see him in the chat. Oh, don't give me credit for that, Gamma Gonad. That was it was all the chat. The chat found that one. So, oh, what about new video receiver for HD0? Asks Willie FPV. I haven't received it yet. I'm buying it, just like you are. So I've got my pre-order in. Pen Pengu, good point. Let's address this point, Pen Pengu. Pen Pengu says, I looked at your Whoop shopping list. To me, the KV seemed kind of high. Is that just what people run today? Pen Pengu, the 26,000 kV Ciati, and Ciati is 99% of that page comes from him. So if I sound like I'm talking, giving his recommendations, that's why. His point is that you should the higher kV motors are better motors. They're better made. And you can always just put a throttle curve in Betaflight if it's too powerful. So just go into the Betaflight PID tuning tab and put like a 80% throttle curve or motor output limit. Just output limit it to whatever you want. But Ciati said just get the 25,000 kV motors, and if you want the power, it's there. Tiago Ramos says Ciati's live stream is scheduled. Okay. He usually streams at 3 o'clock. Stuart D89 says, that's such a crazy suggestion. Limited motors will never fly like a lower KV motor. All right, Stuart. Challenge issued. I'm so tired. Sorry, Stuart. I'm not mad at you. I am, and I start this frustration with myself when I did the 50 hertz versus 500 hertz blind test. And under those test conditions, I couldn't tell the difference between 50 and 500 hertz, and neither could Stinger Swarm. Now, we weren't flying race gates, and since that test, some people have said, well, if you fly race gates, and there was another person who did another blind test, and they could tell the difference. 8 out of 10 and 10 out of 10, I believe, were the numbers. They could tell the difference 8 out of 10 times and 10 out of 10 times between 50 and 500 hertz when flying race gates. So that proves that at least somebody can tell the difference under some conditions. I'm tired. I'm tired of people making claims without data behind it. And I feel like a lot of us have gotten sloppy. So you say that a 25,000 kV motor with a throttle limit is not going to fly anything like a 19,000 kV motor. Prove it. Prove it. Prove it. Set up a test. Do a blind test. Do a blind test. You don't know. You think you know. You haven't done a test. And we all fall into this. We all fall into this. Get two of the exact same quad. Identical. One with 19,000 kV, one with 25,000 kV motors with a throttle limit. Have one, set them up the same. Have one of your friends pick which one, plug it in. Don't tell you which one. You fly it. You got to be honest. You got to want to have actual results, because obviously anybody could fake this. Anybody could fake this and be like, "Oh, look, I got them all right. Bardwell's an idiot." You got to want to be honest. And maybe there is a difference, but so often people say, "Oh, there's such a big difference. 2306 versus 2207. My God, how dare you suggest that they could be anything alike?" Do a blind test. Prove it. I want to see it. I want to see the blind test. It's not that there isn't a difference. There is a difference. But can you tell the difference? Prove it. The biggest difference with a throttle limit is that you get higher amp surges when the motors change speeds. And the other thing is that, like, if a pilot like Ciati says, just do the throttle limit, it works pretty good. You know, there's got to be something to that. There is a difference. Like, once you get to about 65% throttle limit, I think your chances of desync go up significantly. But my point is this. My point is not that there's no difference, but that that we often claim that we can tell the difference, and we haven't done the work to actually earn the right to make that claim. And I'm not going to say you. I started out talking to you, but we talk about we, because we all do this. If you think that there's such a big difference, do a blind test and see if you can tell the difference. And if you can, then you will have earned the right to make that claim. But if all you've done, like so many of us, is fly and think, no, surely there's a huge difference. If you haven't actually done the test, you haven't earned the right to say that. So. Josh Fisk says, should you do that for any quad size then? Highest KV motor available and scale back. No, Josh, because one of the reasons that Ciotti recommended the higher KV motors was that in some cases, the lower KV version was like, it was like an 0802 versus an 0702. And Ciotti was like, just get the higher KV one. Because there were other things about that motor that he preferred. And it's better to have a 25,000 KV motor with a throttle limit than a 19,000 or a 24,000 or something, because there are other things about the motor that were desirable. That's the other thing. Is that there are other variables in this equation than just the KV. Everybody likes to make analogies. Bill says 40 kilometers per hour in 6th gear can't accelerate like 40 kilometers per hour in 2nd gear, so it's not exactly the same. So number one, I said it's not exactly the same. I agree with you, but also that analogy there's a lot that's not right about that analogy. It's an okay analogy, but it's not the right analogy. Do you lose throttle resolution when you put on a throttle limit versus a throttle curve? Yep, you lose some throttle resolution. Can you tell the difference? You think you can, but can you? That's the thing. And I think there's so much I've just been watching. Oh my God, we're 2 minutes to the end of the stream. I've just been watching. I'm not going to pull up the video because it'll take too long. I've been watching this guy. He does these guitar. I just found him. He's been doing these guitar test videos. And he tested the theory that tone wood affects a guitar's tone. This is something that he tested all the things that affect a guitar's tone in an extremely scientific way. And he tested a ton of different variables. And I'm not going to go into details because I only have 1 more minute left till Ciotti starts streaming. But the bottom line is he ended up making a guitar, an electric guitar, with no body. He took these 2 benches, basically, and he basically strung the strings across midair, right? And you could watch the video, you want to find it. But basically, the guitar had the same tone with basically no body whatsoever. And he was like, all this claim that, like, tone wood has this huge effect on the guitar's tone. The wood, was it mahogany or ash? He's like, it's nonsense. There's no difference. The number one thing he found that changed the tone was the distance of the well, obviously the type of pickup, but the distance of the pickup to the strings made the biggest difference in his testing. And so my point is that we take all of these things as given, as they ought to be, because a car in 2nd gear won't accelerate the same as a car in 6th gear, so a higher KV motor can't be the same. And until you actually do tests, there's so much that you're taking for granted, and you haven't actually earned the right to make that. And I was reminded of that when I did my 50 hertz versus 500 hertz, because I was sure I was really confident, like not 100%, and I couldn't. And I went, well, shoot, what else am I wrong about? And I think we could all use a dose of that humility and a scientific approach to knowledge. And that's about it. Ciati, if you want to talk more about this in your stream, by all means, Ciati's posting the link to his stream. He's going to be streaming today. And you can talk about 25,000 kV motors with a throttle limit and what his thoughts are about it. But that's going to do it for me. Coelho FPV, thanks for a $5 super chat. Just ordered the Switchback Pro. Thank you, sir. Evan Wynn, thank you for a $5 super chat. Can you take the SD card contents from the TX16S and use them to switch to Edge TX on the older model TX16S? Yeah, it doesn't. The SD card contents are the same for the TX16S V2 versus V1. The only thing that's changed is something in the hardware. There's no difference. Read in the Wind, thank you for a $10 super chat. Receiver bound, proper RX port enabled, no stick movement work, then stopping. Any idea? Read in the Wind, email me if you want to dig into this with me. JoshuaBardwell@gmail.com. If it used to work and then it stopped working, then it's probably hardware damage or a broken wire because you didn't change the config and the config didn't change by itself. That's going to do it for the stream, folks. I'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. Have a great stream. Ciati, I am